Thank you for tuning into TTV. I'm your host, Toya, and today is Sunday, November 21st, so that means it is time for our fictional book recommendations for 2021 for this Sunday, and I have two for you today that you're going to enjoy. One that deals with the setup. I've talked about the setup in previous videos, which I'll put the link below and at the end of the video so you can go back and watch that one, but the setup. This one book was a perfect example of how you get set up for things in your life. So that's the one book. The second book deals with a lot of stuff that's going on right now. And it's really interesting because this book was not written yesterday. This was written some years ago. So we're going to get into those two books and how they correlate with mind, body, and spirit healing. So stay tuned and I'll be right back. Thank you for tuning into TTV. I'm your host, Toya, and today we're going to go over two books. Like I said before, two books. So the first book I have for you guys is called Murder with Honey Ham Biscuits. It's written by A.L. Herbert, and it's read for you by Machelle Williams. So when I post, I don't know what side it's going to be on, but when I post the pictures of the books, this is the cover that actually shows in the Libby app. So if you go searching for it through the Libby app, you can actually use the image that I post so you can find the book easier, or make sure you're selecting the correct one. So this was, I know I use this word all the time when I'm talking about these books, but this was an interesting book. So you guys know I don't actually read the full bio of the book before I actually select it to listen to, and so I didn't with this one either, and I was actually quite surprised. So the story is about this lady who owns this successful restaurant selling soul food, and she puts her own little twist on the soul food that she sells, and some of it is based off of recipes in the family, which we can all relate to. So she gets the offer to go host this show. So it's like one of the cooking shows, like the Bake Off, or one of them shows where you get contestants on there and they're fighting to get to I think Top Shelf is one of them. But anyway, you know what you can go out there and Google it and you'll see what I'm talking about. So she gets invited to be a guest judge on one of these shows. And they go to the museum and gets to interact with the contestants. And so she gets this ideal of what these contestants are. Then it comes down to the judging, and she sits there. They go through the whole episode of judging. And the show is actually owned by a top wig kind of guy. So he's really high in corporate. He's really high in the chef in restaurant industries. And he broke out into hotels. So he has this elaborate hotel that he's building down there, because the setting is in Georgia. So he has this elaborate hotel, exclusive, luxurious accommodations that he's opening up, and it's not exactly ready to be open. So everything is taking place there. So the contestants that are down to 3, so those 3 contestants stay there. They're doing the show there, and you have the judges there, except for one. So it goes through this whole thing, process of them doing all of this, and then this incident happens. Okay, and I'm trying to give you guys the details without giving it away. So she goes through all of this, and she's the panel judge and all that good stuff, and then this incident happens. So there's this big thing that happens that draws everybody in. So all the contestants, the owner of the hotel, the owner of the chef's restaurant, the one who's producing all of this, his wife, who's actually the producer, who's producing all of this, everybody is drawn into because of this one incident that happens. And of course the title kind of tells you it's Murder with Honey Ham and Biscuits. So this murder happens and everybody gets involved, and this owner of this restaurant that you start out learning about is involved with figuring out and investigating what happens. So the reason I say this is a good example of the setup, and what I mean by setup is things happen for a reason. I'm one of those that don't believe in coincidences. Okay, things happen for a reason, and sometimes it is painfully set up for it to happen. So giving you example, you had a rough day at work. You're walking to your car, you get in the car, and the radio comes automatically on when you start because you don't turn it off. And the song that is playing is one of the songs that you love, that uplifts you and makes you feel good. Okay? So it's not a coincidence that that happened. There was a setup for that to happen. There is something that actually took place, like your spirit guides or spirit themselves. Like something took place for all of that to happen, for you to get in the car at that exact moment that that song comes on and plays for you. It could be that the DJ had to run to the bathroom, and so the assistant had to pick the song, and that was the song that she picked. You don't know the behind the scenes. All you know is the end result, which is that all of this happened for that song to play as soon as you get in the car to make you feel better. Okay, so that's what I mean by the setup. Now that's just a very generalized way of putting it up. In this case, there were 5 judges that got asked to judge in this show before it got to this lady. 5, okay? 5 judges. So they went through 5 different people who told them no for whatever reason for it to be offered to her. And for her to have her cousin there that pushed her to say yes to this, because she wasn't going to say yes to it. So her cousin actually had to push her to say yes. Oh yeah, you're doing this. You're not getting, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. You're doing this. It's going to be good publicity. They paying you, you know. She's the one going, you're doing this. Like, you're not going to say no to this. This is not something you say no to this. So you had the setup of the 5 people that came before her. 5 that said no for whatever reason or backed out. You had her cousin that was sitting there pushing her to do this. So she does it. She's a panelist on this cooking show. So she's one of the judges, and she goes in and she makes the decision and gets caught up in this murder. And it's because of her and her investigation in it that this murder actually gets solved. Now, who's to say that same thing would have happened with one of the other judges? One of the other 5 people that came before her may have looked at this and like, okay, this ain't my problem. I ain't doing, so I'm out, you know. So it took her to be involved in it to figure out what actually happened. And you had the police and stuff involved too, but it was her investigating and her figuring things out that actually got the case solved. So that's what I mean by the setup. They set it up for 5 people to be discounted. They set it up for her cousin to push her. Well, actually not for her cousin to push her, but for the opportunity to be presented to her in the presence of her cousin. And then for her to do it so that she can help solve this murder. And that's what I mean by the setup. This actually happens in real life. If you go back and you look at some of the events in your life, you will see there were things that happened that allowed for you to be where you are, that allowed for things to happen in your life. That's what I mean by the setup. And so there is a video, like I said, that I'll put it at the link. If I can put it above, I will. But I also put it at the end of the video for you, so you can check out that one where I talk about the setup. So I did enjoy this. I will say this, though. So sometimes when you're reading or listening, I should say, to an audiobook, the narrator may not be the best at their job. Might not make it that interesting. And this will be one of those times where I almost stopped listening to the book because I didn't like the flat tone of the narrator. She has a very flat tone in talking, in reading the stories, but I was able to push through all of that to actually listen to the whole book, and I was actually glad I did because I did enjoy the story. Another thing too is if you like to cook, she gives recipes throughout the whole book. So they talked about the Honey Ham Biscuits. They talked about this red pepper pineapple jam. She also talked about some other food items, but they give you the recipes for it too, so you can try out the recipes, you know. So if you do plan on listening to the book and you want to do the recipes, just make sure you have a pen and paper nearby, because they will give you recipes to some of the dishes that were featured in the actual book. So that was a nice twist to something that you don't normally get when you're listening to books. But I do recommend listening to it. It did have some stuff in here, and it's twists, because I'm gonna tell you who I thought did it. I like to go for the non-obvious. So I went with the non-obvious person that usually gets overlooked, and of course that wasn't the one that did it. So, but anyway, you might have better luck at figuring out who did it than I did. So that was, again, Murder with Honey Ham Biscuits by A.L. Herbert and read by Machelle Williams. It was 7 hours long. So you might be able to get through it in a day or two, especially if you do like I do, listen to it while you're at work or in the car or while you're cooking or doing something else. So that was that one. Now the second book is by an author that I love. I've read, like actually physically read the books, as well as I've listened to the audio on a few of his books. His name is Dan Brown. There wasn't a book that he did that I didn't like. So anything he does, I'm sure you will enjoy it. And he has a lot of his stuff that he does ties into some of the technologies that we have in actual use and existence today. Okay. So there was one book where what he was describing sounded a lot like CERN, which I don't think he called it CERN or said CERN in it, but that's basically what he was talking about, in the descriptions and things you can go on. So the book I want to discuss today is called Inferno. Again, this was written by Dan Brown and is read by Paul Michael. It's 17 hours long, so it's one that's going to give you some length. Like you'll be able to listen to it throughout the whole week if you do like I do. I do really enjoy the Dan Brown books. I can't say that enough. Angels and Demons, I think, was my favorite one. But in this story, you have a scientist who, again, I got to try to figure out how to tell you guys this without giving the story away. That's why you'll see me or hear me pause for a minute. But this book was about a scientist who was very big on population control. And he was one of those that felt like resources would be diminished if the population continued to grow as it did. So he created, I hope I'm not giving too much away for you guys, but he created can I even say this word on here without getting banned? But anyway, we'll find out. But he created a virus that once released into the public would randomly affect different people. Okay, so you can line up 10 people and every fourth person might be affected by it, or every third person might be affected, or out of those 10 people you might get 5 that are affected, 5 that are not, and you can get another 10 and it might be 6 that are affected and 4 that are not, or get another one and 7 not affected and 3 are. So it was like a random selection based off of a lot of scientific stuff that I'm not going to get into. And so what he did was, or the whole plot of it was trying to get to this bomb that he created to release this virus during like this rave party in Italy somewhere, I think it was. I think it was in Italy. So Florence. Yes, Florence, Italy. Yes, so Florence. So apparently there's this underground cave or something in Florence and there's a party that happens where people fly in from all over the world. Okay, so they come in from all, like they used to say, all corners of the earth to be and participate in this party, and then they fly back home. And so that's what it was he was trying to do, is get this bomb released during that time so that that virus can be spread corner to corner, like they used to say, throughout the world. So it would be a global issue. Sounds like anything we know about? Anything that's happening? Might not be too far-fetched, huh? And this book was written in 2013. So this wasn't like it was written during the pandemic or before the pandemic. This was written in 2013. So that's how Dan Brown is. Some of the things that he writes relates to things that are going on in the world, and it's kind of creepy because he'll write the book and then some years later something similar will happen. It's like this sounds like what I read in this Dan Brown book. So yeah, so just that's how he rolls. But it's very entertaining. His it makes you think. It makes you process stuff, and you would think the main character in these books that I'm talking about is Robert Langdon. And you would think that after everything that Robert Langdon has been through, that he would know better than to do some of these things that he does or get caught up in. It's like, dude, how many times have you been in this situation? Like, how many times for real have you been in this situation? And so the reason I wanted to discuss this is not just because how it correlates to what's going on in today's society right now, but also because, guys, you really need to get your spiritual connections and get your integrity pulled together, because there are things that are actually trying to work against us, I should say. And so this book is a primary example of how things that we read and watch and look at affect and change us, how we're kind of programmed for things. So y'all got to get y'all spirits up. You really do. You got to get your spiritual guard up, because it's a lot going on. And if you take the information that is presented in this book and actually do some research on it, you will see. So you really need to protect your immune system. You really need to protect your body and make sure it's as clean as possible, whether you're doing detoxes, whether it's clean food you're eating. But you really just need to reevaluate what goes on with your body. And also not take the things that you see presented to you on the surface. Sometimes you got to go deeper when you're looking at stuff. Dig deep. Always follow money. That's one of the biggest things that anybody has always said, is always follow the money. Because again, the reason this scientist was going through all of this was for population control, because he felt that the resources would be drained if the human population continued in the manner that it was going. And so he created this virus literally to depopulate the world. And it wasn't done in a manner that was going to kill people, but it was done in a manner in which would prevent further occurrences, like further births, further pregnancies. So it's one of those that's worth listening to. Like, it's a reason that this theme has always come up. Like, this isn't a new thing. This isn't a new ideal. This isn't a new issue that people are just now coming up with. This is a recurring thing that's been going on for decades, okay? Population control is something that people have been very concerned about for decades, and there are some that are willing to take those extra steps and go the extra mile. If you look at the things that are presented to us in movies and TV shows, you will see things that back up this. And I always said, even when I was a kid, I've always said, anything they present in a movie or a TV show or in a book or something like that, that has been around for at least 10 years, at minimum 10 years. So if you're a Marvel fan like I am, like I love Marvel, I love watching those movies. But if you think about it, Thanos had that same ideal. And when you're listening to these people and they actually telling you their thoughts and their ideals and the reasons why they feel so strongly on this, it kind of makes sense. Like, Thanos was the bad guy, but what he said actually kind of made some sense. Even though morally you wouldn't feel okay doing what he did. Even though morally you wouldn't do what the scientists did in Inferno. Inferno is also a movie too. Tom Hanks plays Robert Langdon in the series, because I think he did the Da Vinci Code too. I think those two movies were produced for Dan Brown's movies. But again, this isn't a new ideal. It's not a new concept. It is something that has been around. So do your research, do your due diligence, and look into it and see what you find. Okay, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised what you find. And again, this is something that people are talking about. That's why they talk about global warming. That's why they talk about, right now they're looking at shortages in foods and things, which is a whole nother thing that I'm not gonna get into. But it's a lot that's going on that relates to the story of Inferno, and it's the stuff that's going on right now in today's society, in today's world. And this book was written in 2013. Okay, so just check it out. That's all I'm saying. Do your research, do your due diligence. Don't have to take my word for it, but just really look into it and check it out. But as far as the book goes, Inferno, it's a very good book. I love Dan Brown. I think his work is fantastic, and I love the intelligence that he puts into his writing. Like it's not just him writing and saying stuff and making up things. No, you can actually go look up some of the things that he actually puts in there. He uses a lot of fact in his fictional works. So you can go research and go look up things that he's putting in there, like in the Da Vinci Code. He mentioned a lot of things about Da Vinci, and if you go look it up, those were actual things that Da Vinci was into and actually did. You know, I think that was the Rosicrucians. Probably said that wrong. But anyway, that was an actual group. Even some of the ley lines that he mentions in that book, those were actual ley lines that you could actually go look up. And people do the things that he says. So again, there's some intelligence that he's puts into his writing. And that's one of the things I think I love the most about it, because it gets you thinking like, okay, yes, this is a fictional story about Robert Langdon, but a lot of what he's saying is factual. So I love how he combines the two. So, in my opinion, you can't go wrong with listening to anything or reading any book by Dan Brown. I love him. He's one of my favorites. So, those are the two books recommendations that I had. Did I say? Let me just repeat it in case I didn't. But Inferno was written again by Dan Brown, but read by Paul Michael, and it's 17 hours long. And again, that would be written down below. Both of these books are books that you can find on the Libby app. And if you haven't heard me before in one of the previous videos, you use the Libby app through your library card. So you get your library card, sign up for OneDrive, and then you have access to Libby. And it's a free charge because it's part of the library resources. So check that out. And also check out the link. It's going to be on one of these sides. But check out the link for my video on the setup. And you can hear me explain more about the setup and how it affects you in your day-to-day life. And pay attention. Look out for it. Because I'm telling you, it's a real thing. It actually does happen. So check that video out. Check out the link below. I also have the link for my book below as well. If you want to purchase that on Amazon. If you want a signed copy, just reach out to me. But I love you guys. Happy Sunday. Enjoy your weekend. And I will talk to you later.